if someone has a dream, they have a vision of starting their own business, the biggest thing is just to overcome your fear. You just overcome your fear and just take one step.
You're listening to the Gold Standard Podcast. I'm your host, 3-time Olympian and motivational speaker, Leah Amico. On this show, we're going to dig deep to unlock what it actually takes to build a foundation for greatness. If you're an ambitious person with big vision, but you feel like fear is holding you back, get ready for some major breakthroughs. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. You are going to want to listen and take notes. We have a very special guest today. Today's guest is one of America's foremost child behavior experts and founder of the Post Institute for Family-Centered Therapy. He is an internationally recognized speaker, a consultant, a best-selling author in his field, as well as he's been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. And of course, this is really special for me because he is also the founder and CEO of Major Media League. So we will be talking a little bit about that. Major Media League is the host of this podcast, or the sponsor, of this podcast. And so excited to welcome Bryan Post to the show.
Super excited to be here with you, Leah. It is actually an honor and a privilege to be interviewed on this platform and the Gold Standard with so many other phenomenal guests that you've had. So I feel very honored to be a part of that group of people.
Well, and I love that you're going to bring something new and different to the table, but yet I think that is so important for our audience to listen to. Every one of us that grows up and we have different situations in our families, whether we had it growing up or whether we're parents and we deal with things with our own children. So let's just jump right in a little bit to tell us a little bit about your youth, your upbringing, your situation in your childhood.
Well, I grew up in a little town in Oklahoma called Mountain View. It's 2,000 people in western Oklahoma. So it was actually an idyllic country setting to be raised in. It's hard to find that kind of place now. But I was adopted, and I was adopted as an infant. And I spent probably my entire life there in Mountain View. I also had a little sister who was adopted. She was a year younger than me. And we both came from traumatic early environments, and that's part of my purpose and my passion in working with families and adopted children all these years is kind of rooted in that. We had a lot of problems. I mean, I was a kid with a lot of behavior issues. A lot of my behavior issues got masked because I was very social. I was always a leader in school. I got good grades. Teachers loved me. I was a good athlete. And so it was easy. I mean, you could very easily call me the golden child in my family. And the contrast to that was my sister, who had a completely different early birth experience, which I think defined her life. And her relationship with my parents was completely opposite to my relationship with my parents. Even though I always say I had more behavior problems than my sister, I just didn't get caught. And the behavior problems that she had actually initially weren't that bad. It's just that they were a perfect alignment with my parents. Both of them were parentified. So they were one of the oldest of sibling groups of 10 and 9. So they were hyper responsible. And my sister, she was born premature. She was in an incubator for 3 months. She weighed 3 pounds. She was I now know it to be emotionally arrested. So she was, we call it being socially and emotionally immature, but she was emotionally arrested from her early trauma experience. And she, never got along with kids her own age. So she always wanted to play with children younger than her. She was defiant, and she didn't get along in school very well, always had problems with the other kids. And that was always a source of angst and conflict for my parents. And it just grew. And so for years, I mean, we just lived in constant conflict. And the thing is that my parents, they did the absolute best that they could. They used every possible resource available to them. but they were old school because that's what everyone in our neighborhood, we all grew up that way, right? So what happens is when you have the working blueprints for something, when stress sets in, you typically, instead of doing something different, you just do more of it. So one whipping was never enough. It would become, 2 or 3 whippings and grounding and yelling. And then it was just constant for years and years and years. And so that was kind of, the backdrop of my inner home experience against these 2 people that worked extremely hard. They were predictable, they were consistent, they worked hard, they came home, I never worried about a thing as a kid. I always had clothes, I always had food, none of those kind of issues. But when you combine parents who came from tough circumstances themselves, who were stressed and overwhelmed, and you combine that with kids who are stress sensitive, it really can create a very challenging situation. So that's pretty much what I grew up experiencing and living through.
Well, and I would think that's part of, the path that you eventually took. We'll get into that because you did become a licensed social worker and you have such a heart for foster children, for adopted kids. But I know, also reading your book, From Fear to Love, you talk a lot about not only foster and adopted kids that maybe go through some challenging things that others don't have to necessarily deal with because maybe their start wasn't exactly the same, but there's a whole lot of kids that are biological in their own families. And there's a lot of issues. I know I took a lot away when I was reading your book. What's one thing, before we switch gears on that topic, that you could say to maybe a parent right now who has a really, really challenging kid? I know they can go to the Post Institute online to get more information. You have a lot of stuff on there, but what's something you could just tell somebody, that has maybe a really difficult child?
It's very simple. Your child is stressed. Stress and fear are the two biggest barriers to relationship in any home. And the thing is we can't see it. You can't see the stress because it's at a neurophysiologic level. Your child has a stress sensitive brain. So what stresses them and what puts them in a state of overwhelm doesn't look the same for you or for other kids their same age. So see the stress, think about it from a perspective of stress and fear, and then ask yourself, what can I do to reduce the stress in my relationship with my child today? And then what can I do? And I always say, what are 3 things you can do to reduce the stress in your home and in your relationship with your child? And what are 3 things you can do to improve your relationship? So do more of those 3 things and do less of those other 3 things.
I love that. That's great. Okay. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go to, you said you were a good kid. You were, you had these issues, but maybe they were underlying. What helped you to be able to become a collegiate football player?
Oh, so from the time I was in the 1st grade, that's all I wanted to do. I fell in love with Tony Dorsett, number 33 of the Dallas Cowboys, somewhere in there. And it is all, other than being a superhero, running around with a cape of Superman or being Captain America, all I ever wanted to do was play football. And it was such a passion for me. It wasn't just a hobby. I was the kid who walked around with the football all day long. At a very young age, I started working out, going to the gym. It's all I wanted to do was just play football. And I always say that football was the catalyst to me even going to college. Without football, I don't think that college was in my purview of something that I was really interested in, because school was easy for me. I never had to study real hard. It just came kind of natural, but it wasn't something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed playing football. And so that was just it for me. I was just crazy about the game.
That's a great point. I think a lot of athletes, there's some that definitely just struggle through school, but they do it so they can make grades. Even obviously in high school, you have to be able to get a certain grade point average to be able to compete. And so when you find those things that you love to do, even that can be the driving point to help you get, whether your high school graduation or, your degree in college. Okay. So what would you say? I'm listening to you and I talk about goals, right? And the importance of that, dreams. Really, sometimes they can just be dreams, a vision you have, you just know where you wanted to end up. How important, because you've been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, you were a college athlete. You've accomplished so many different things. How important is goal setting in all of this and knowing where you want to end up?
Oh, I would say it's probably one of the next to perseverance. Goal setting is probably one of the most important things that a person has to do when they're working to achieve something of significance. And to go back to that football story, Mrs. Woods, my first grade teacher, who at the time seemed really old, and believe it or not, she just died like 5 years ago. So we always think she was a vampire. But she asked us in the first grade, like, what do you want to do? And she went around to all the kids. And I said, I want to be a professional football player. And so that was probably the beginning of me setting a goal. And that was just a single goal. And as I got through college, and then I started studying self-help materials, and my background's clinical social work. So then as I started becoming an entrepreneur and kind of getting exposed to self-help and business and philosophy and things of that nature, and started learning about goal setting, especially I think I first learned about goal setting from Tony Robbins, maybe, and then another guy named Mark Allen. He was talking about goal setting, and I started writing my goals. I started hearing about the importance of not just having goals, but writing your goals. And so for years, probably 10 years, I've got journals upon journals of just writing goals every day, because it's programming your unconscious. It's programming your reticular activating system in your brain. So there's a whole nother level to goal setting that people don't quite wrap their brains around. That when you set a goal, it's one thing. When you write a goal, when you speak a goal, and then when you continually condition yourself for that goal, what you're doing is you're activating this nerve bundle in your brain called the reticular activating system, where you're actually pulling that energy, that vibration of that goal, you're pulling it towards you. That's why goal setting is so important, because when you set a goal for something you want, if you're really bought into it, like if you make it a part of you, then what you're doing is you're conditioning the vibration of your body, of your cellular system, to attract that into your life. That's why goals are so important, because you're actually programming yourself to see that and to make that happen, for that to become a reality. That's why Napoleon Hill said, what the mind of man can conceive and believe, he can achieve. Because if we can conceive it and think about it, and then if we can really believe it, but not just believe it like, oh yeah, one day I want to do this, but believe it like, I see myself in this. I feel myself in this goal. I dream about this goal. I think about it obsessively. Then we can achieve it, because we're programming ourselves for it.
I noticed that talking to a lot of different people, that it really does. It starts with a thought. It starts with a thought and a desire, right? And then it's like, well, that's where I'm going to end up. And then what do I need to do to get there? And like you talked about the perseverance piece, but really just knowing it and believing it. I saw people that I think didn't have, always the top talent. I mean, maybe myself included, but yet I would say that belief almost could overcome the talent piece, and even the passion as well, and drive, which I think that's all tied together. Okay. So you went to college, you graduated. Did you immediately know, okay, I want to be a social worker? Like, was that, from when you were young? Is that something you set out to do?
Really, when I played college until my second year. After my second year, I decided I didn't want to play anymore. I was tired of being hurt. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my next class was an introduction to social work. And I just fell in love. And so it was like one thing led to the next. And then I went through undergraduate school. I had an opportunity to get a job before I got out of before I graduated my bachelor's degree. I had an opportunity to go to work for the Social Security Department. I had me and another guy, I think they were just looking for a minority actually. Me and the other guy interviewed, and I got selected, and I was like, no, thank you. That's not for me. And people who know me, like, I have problems with authority. I would have never lasted in that position very long. And so then like I said, I always got good grades in school. So I had a high GPA, and a professor of mine in social work mentioned an advanced standing program at the University of Texas at Arlington. I didn't know what else I wanted to do. So I just decided to get a master's degree in social work. And so when I went there, in the midst of that, I met my first mentor. And he's the one who directed my path into becoming a clinician and working with families and working with kids.
So how long did you remain in that arena? And like, what would you say you took out of it?
I'm still in that arena to this day. I have a company that I started 3 years ago that serves adoptive families in Northern California. I've been doing it for over 25 years, working with adopted kids and families and children with behavior problems. And it's been my sole passion and purpose for almost my entire professional career. I've also had a secret love affair with entrepreneurship. So it's something I've always done along the way, started various business ventures, but kind of that guiding post for me has always been the work I've done with families and the lives I can change. And that's it's taken me all around the world. I've influenced lives of millions of people. So it's very cool and still get to do it to this day. We have a very cool team here in Northern California. We go into homes and work with adoptive families that are at risk. And I still do that. I'm in Sacramento today.
The Gold Standard podcast is brought to you by Major Media League. Major Media League is a revolutionary competitive app launching in June 2022. This app gives softball athletes a platform to showcase their skills by participating in challenges and having the chance to win prizes and scholarships. This is also an opportunity to promote your own talent. For all the athletes out there, it's free to join. So go sign up today at www.majormedialeague.com. The link is also in the show notes. You'll be notified when the Major Media League app launches, so get prepared for the unbelievable opportunity that lies ahead to grow your brand as an athlete.
I think that's something that is so needed, and probably a lot of more people need to be checking out what you do and ask how they can do that in their own neck of the woods, because our kids need it. They're worth it. And they need to know how loved they are and how valued they are and that they have a future. So yes, thank you for what you do already. Let's talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship. What would you tell somebody right now who's like, I have these ideas, but what do I do first? Like, how would you encourage somebody to step out and to, maybe start a company or, just take their dreams and make them a reality?
It's so interesting, Leah. I started my first business when I was 6 years old. It was a lemonade stand in my driveway. And I realized that I couldn't get any, this is where my marketing started. My marketing education came in as a 6-year-old. I realized I couldn't get any traffic in my driveway. So I had to venture down the end of the block. And it's so funny that my parents allowed me to do that. But my best day, I made $4.25. I still remember that to this day. And the significant piece of that is that if someone has a dream, they have a vision of starting their own business, the biggest thing is just to overcome your fear. You just overcome your fear and just take one step. It's just one. You don't have to go start an LLC. You don't have to go get insurance. You don't have to go join the Chamber of Commerce. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just do the smallest step towards that goal, towards that dream, towards that vision. And that could be, getting a picture of someone who's doing what you want to do and put it on a board in your bedroom or put it on your bathroom mirror and just look at it and start thinking about what your business is going to be like. See, a lot of times we just get too overwhelmed with all the, some of you read these business magazines and then entrepreneur magazines, and they're telling you got to do this and do this and do this. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just have to start taking action. And so you have to overcome your fear and you start taking a little bit of action, a little step at a time. You don't have to quit your job, work on your business at night. We have 24 hours in a day. Most people only work 8 to 10 hours a day, unless you're, crazy like I am and work 16. You got plenty of time to just spend a little time on your business and spend a little time on your business every single day. And pretty soon you're going to get to a place to where you're going to really decide whether this is something you want to do or something you don't want to do. And you might realize along that journey, if it's an idea that's going to work or if it's an idea that's not going to work. I mean, there's been a lot of times in my career as an entrepreneur that I've gone down a path. In 6 months down the path, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, don't be afraid to just take the first step. And sometimes the first step is as simple as just writing down the vision for what you want to do and going to talk to someone who's already doing it.
That is such great advice. I think that can just be applied to anything, because as an Olympian, right, we go out and we got to this point, but that's not where we started. And then even on the Olympic team, if you came to us on a day-to-day basis, we were doing the little things. It's just that when you do the little things long enough and well enough, and like you said, you take a little step forward every single day, pretty soon, before you know it, you're the best in the world. And like you're saying, you're seeing success. And then, now I'd love you to speak into how maybe a couple core principles that you've been in a lot of different areas, a lot of different fields. You've had a lot of different types of companies. What are maybe those couple core things that you've seen just weaved throughout every, role that you've had, or every job company you've started?
Probably one of the biggest is relationships. You've got to be willing to talk to other people. You've got to be willing to open up, share. There's this idea that's going around now. I see it on social media sometimes, that you don't, you keep your ideas a secret because people are going to, put you down and they're going to laugh at you. I don't believe in that at all. I believe if you have an idea, you talk to people about it, because the more you talk to people about it, the more energy you're sowing into it. And then those relationships, you start forming those relationships. I'd say that that's probably one of the biggest ones. And the second one is the willingness to take action. I think about this, as you mentioned, as for you being an Olympian and all the softball you've played, but think about the times when there's an opportunity, and it can just be something fun, where it's, you've got to step up to do it, right? So someone's out pitching some softballs, and they're offering people an opportunity to come take some hits, and everyone's gathered around watching it and laughing, and you get that inner anxiety, and you want to step up to that plate, but it's just so hard to do it. That first step is probably in every single business, every single undertaking, every single endeavor. And if you'll just take a few deep breaths and push through that initial anxiety, which is just fear, it's fear of stepping outside of your comfort. That's all it is. There's nothing more than that. It's that fear of stepping outside of your comfort. You step up to that plate, and that ball's going to get pitched, and you're going to take a swing. And the more you swing, the more comfortable and the more relaxed you're going to get. And so that's probably one of the second ones, is just being willing to push through your fear and your anxiety to take action. I'd say those are a couple.
Yeah. And I think that it really qualifies in everything that we do in so many different areas. I think so many people stop before they get started. And that's just it. And so much like Crystal Bustos, my Olympic teammate, when I interviewed her, that's something major that she talked about. She said, just doing it and doing it afraid and being willing to try, because the lessons you are going to learn, you cannot learn otherwise.
Yes.
And using, again, even if it doesn't go well, like you said, or you want to shift gears, like you mentioned, then you can take what you learned from that and use it to the next thing you choose to do. So the relationships, I think that's very, very important. And I think God crosses people's paths at different times also for a reason. And you and I were able to connect last fall, which I'm so thankful for. And one of the big reasons is you had gotten into this area. Obviously, you were connected through family and kids with softball, but let's talk a little bit about Major Media League and just even how you started this and what you're expecting to see out of it.
Oh, absolutely. So I've always been a learner, right? And I like to encourage people to learn. And I was just thinking this morning about the masterminds I've been in, and that's how I met Jeff Hoffman, who introduced me to you. How the more successful I become, the more I would want to do masterminds, because it's always given me an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so in this process, I met a guy, his name's Chris Flanagan, and he had a program where he's taking kids softball, girls softball abroad. Really neat guy, has been changing a lot of lives for a long time. And being an entrepreneur, I've got this inner beacon where I just listen to people's ideas, and my brain just goes to work, and ideas come, and the little puzzle pieces start coming together. in the process of talking to Chris, I started formulating this idea about the Major Media League. And really at that point, it was just expanding on what he was doing. And as I invested some time and some energy, and this is a first conversation meeting this guy, I'm like, hey, do you want to partner in what you're doing? And then it's like, hey, I'm going to go on one of these trips abroad with you because I just want to learn what you do. And not only that, I'm going to hire someone while I'm there to video the whole 8 days because it's going to be good footage for you. It's just, it's one of those take action things. And we don't fail, we learn. There's never, I think we get conditioned for failure from school where you got to make A's instead of F's. And if you make F's, it's bad. I think that's bad conditioning. You never fail. You always learn, like you were just saying. And so over the period of time of doing that and just starting to think about that, and I love thinking about business. It's probably next to thinking about my wife and my family and my kids. I just love thinking about business. And I love to think about God too. Love to have this, just thinking about God is just a beautiful thing. but I just, the more I spent time thinking about it, I thought, you know what, when I was a college athlete, and this is what kept coming up for me. When I was a college athlete, I was on a scholarship, so all school was paid for, but I didn't have any money. And I called home one day and I said to my mom, hey, can you send me some money? And she said, okay. And so I waited, because this is during the time when you had the snail mail and wait in, they put it in the little mailbox. I went and checked the mail one day and there's a little check from my mom or little dollar bills. I can't remember, but it was $4. I waited all week for $4. And I thought, oh man, what can I do with $4? And so that, believe it or not, that has stuck in my head for years. That's 25, 30 years, 30 years. And I thought about Major Media League, but more than that, I thought about the college athlete who is out there. And then I thought about the high school athlete myself when I was in high school, who's out there working hard. There were so many early mornings, Leah, when I'd get up, when I know it was 5:30 in the morning and there was not another high school kid up, and I was walking or running down to the weight room and working out. And I had an older gentleman I worked out with, and he'd get up and he'd come work out before he went to work. Other kids weren't doing that. I busted my butt to become a superstar in high school. And then I went to college and I didn't have any money. And I thought, you know what, all these kids today, they spent, especially these athletes, they work so hard to get to a certain level, and they're spending so much time on social media. We call them being consumers, but they're actually producers. They're being producers for these social media platforms that isn't benefiting them in any way. So I thought, what if I can teach kids how to become producers for themselves via social media, because everyone's got their phone. We're on our phone 100 times a day, looking through social media 100 times a day. What if I can teach kids how to a few times a day or a few times a week to do something that's positioning themselves as a potential influencer or brand ambassador? And then that's how the thought of Major Media League started to come together. What if I could actually teach kids the skills of entrepreneurship and give them a platform to where they could compete for these different prizes and awards and things like that. And we could build this huge league that's really impactful and really influential. And then I can go to these big corporations and say, hey, you need branding, you want marketing, you want advertising. I have all of these athletes. And unlike all the other platforms where you hire one influencer, you're going to be able to hire our entire league. So we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of athletes at one time that will help your brand. And then what we can do is we can completely change the game with the contests that we do. And the contests are all social media related. Like, we call it Major Media League, but it's all about social media activities and exercises and dances and goofy things like that. But what it's doing is it's helping children learn how to build a following and grow fans. And so we're creating a whole social media platform just for young athletes to help to inspire and to create impact and influence in their lives so that they can grow that and learn how to just determine their own, like set their own path. Not go, I love college, nothing wrong with college, but how many kids get out? In fact, my daughter's boyfriend, he was a college athlete too, football player, great kid, all state, all these great things. He just finished finally 5 years of bachelor degree, physical therapy school, and he got offered a job for $12 an hour. Oh my gosh, it makes my stomach hurt just thinking about that. How it makes me sad how hard he's worked for all this time to be offered $12 an hour, and how depressing and how sad that must be. And so I want to create a platform to where kids can learn about entrepreneurship, because it's truly the only way that you can control your own destiny. And we don't learn it in school today. And so I want to create that opportunity for them. And then I want to make corporations pay a lot of money to advertise on our platform. And then I want to be able to pay, give kids full rides to college. I want to be able to, give them cars and just, all this great stuff. So that's really what the Major Media League, that's kind of the seeds of what it was born from.
That is beautiful. I love this because it all goes back to your heart. It goes back to even just your childhood and what you want for others. And then again, ultimately to be able to make this next generation better. And granted, we didn't grow up with social media, right? It's a whole new world.
Right.
And I think because of that, it's opened the door for so many other types of opportunities than we had when we were growing up. And so, and listening to you, I think right off the bat, like there's always going to be those top tier, very, very tiny percentage at the top that everybody's going to be going after. They're going to be getting all the deals. And that's going to be the people that, that everybody knows. But I feel like this is the other 99.5% of athletes that don't have that, can still use this platform and still learn from it. It's that idea of learning. And I know for me, it's something that could have helped me. I was fortunate, but I kind of played with some superstars that were the big names, and I've been very blessed to do a lot of the things I have. But I can see how, the benefit I would have had being able to learn how to build your brand at an earlier age. And I, for so long, thought, well, I don't have a brand. And so, I've learned a lot. You and I are in a mastermind together, and I've learned so much just from listening and gleaning from your wisdom. Like you said, I think who we surround ourselves with is so important. And that's, for you, the action point, stepping out and taking action, the relationships like you talk about, who are we learning from? Who are we around? Who are we next to? And then just continuing to grow our minds and to learn. And, really this podcast is happening because Bryan, you and I, and back in November, we were in Texas, you brought me out for an event and we're talking and you said, hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And I said, yeah, I've thought about it, but if I was going to do it, it had to have a purpose and I had to have a reason, I really needed direction. And then just again, like you talk about, you and I just chatting back and forth, we got some clarity. And then I felt it just kept getting more and more narrow. And so really you're the reason, Bryan. That's why I'm so happy to have you on this first season, because you're making dreams like mine come true just because you've come into my life. And now people are able to hear stories of other Olympians and my Olympic coach, and then people like yourself as well. So let's talk a little bit, before we go, because we still want to get a couple of these points. And your story, I think, really kind of just really touches on every aspect of the gold standard. We talked about goals already. Let's talk about the overcoming obstacles, the perseverance piece. You mentioned how that is, probably the main thing other than goals, like you said, and knowing where you want to go. Talk about that perseverance piece and how crucial that is for any of us to be able to reach, any success that we're striving for.
Leah, the Bible talks about, the scripture in the Bible that talks about faith, focus, and perseverance. Of those three things, you can put those three things together and you can accomplish almost anything that you want. And perseverance is, and man, I have gone through so much. So many dark days. And it goes back to the overcoming obstacles, goes back to the goals. I've gone through those dark days because I had those goals as a guidepost for where I wanted to end up, and not allowing myself to get mired down into where I was at. but where I wanted to go. So when it got really dark and when it was really hard, or when something didn't work out, or there was some big emotional challenge in my life, it was never about the right now. This is just the diamond, the coal that's being compressed and heated, because I'm going somewhere. And so it's like, if you keep your eye on the prize, if you keep your eye on the goal, that's why you got to have those goals, because obstacles are going to freaking come, because obstacles are what occur in your life to strengthen you and grow you to be able to become the person to achieve your goals. So if you have a big goal, you have to imagine you're going to have to overcome major obstacles, because that's the growth process. You don't have it in your life right now because you're not ready for it. But when you will stretch yourself, and you'll go through the challenges and you'll go through the obstacles, that's what's going to get you to the goal. So it's just, and this is why I have so much respect for athletes, because most athletes like yourself who reach the heights of athletic performance and achievement, you started young. And I know that journey as an athlete is mired with loss. It's mired with pain. It's mired with disappointment. And so there's thousands of experiences that you have to go through to condition your mind. And people, in our society, I feel like we don't embrace that mindset, what it takes to get that mindset of peak performance, to get to that place. We want to take things and we want to disseminate it down to where it's so easy, right? We want to make it look so simple, and well, she's lucky because she's tall and she's fast, and oh my gosh, there's so much more to it than that. So obstacles, embrace them, love the process, cry through it, sweat through it, bleed through it, and stay focused on the goal, because you're going through the obstacle in order to grow yourself to get to the goal.
I'd have to just say what you said, the bigger the goal, the bigger the obstacles, but that's part of it, because you are going for something so big. And it's true, every level that I reached that was newer and higher, college, and then the Olympics, like there were new challenges, harder challenges, but you're right. It just made me dig deeper and grow more and learn more. And then that's what helped me to be able to be on that podium next to my teammates. So you just said that so well.
And that's the perseverance part, right? You have to keep going. You just don't quit. If you will just keep going, it is going to work out.
Yeah. And it's true. We don't blare everywhere the discouragement, the frustration, the days that we want to give up or we think we're not good enough. That's not something we vocalize, but you're right. It's like, it's just if we chose not to walk away, if we chose to continue, right? And everybody has different situations, but I can look at moments that I had my freshman year of college. Can I really make it at this level? And I think in some ways it's okay to question that if you'll just keep going and find out.
let me, I want to share something really, really vulnerable here, Leah, because it doesn't stop just because you've reached success. It is a part of everything. I mean, I'm launching the Major Media League, but my other business, I have several other businesses, all in different stages of growth, and they all have their own challenges, and they all make me feel insecure at various times. It's like I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. I've had 20 different businesses. I've grown businesses to millions of dollars, and I feel significantly insecure about this new business and where I'm at in this other business. And it's like, oh my gosh. And there's so many times I want to just pack it up and I want to go home to mama's house and eat mama's fried chicken and lay on the couch and drink sweet tea and, just be taken care of. I'm 49 years old.
That is so good because it's so true. Like it doesn't stop. It's just when it comes, recognizing it's going to still be there. But that's I am too. I'm going to fight back. Okay. So the leadership piece, I just think you're a great leader. At the times I've been around you, I don't know. For me personally, there's just something about like your calmness, like you said, like there's just something when it's like when other people can feel like they can be heard, around you. What is the most important to you as a CEO? Like you said, having so many different companies, so you're working with a lot of people. What's most important for you as a leader?
I think probably one of the most important things is just knowing that I don't have all the answers. And that's probably a big one for me. And the other one probably is equally is important is remembering to breathe and keep myself present and open and in a loving place. And being in a loving place doesn't mean that, things are always going to work out and every relationship's going to work out. Sometimes you got to make tough calls, but I want to do it from a place of love. I'm going to do it from a place of presence and mindfulness. And so those are probably the big ones for me is just knowing that I don't know it all, being willing to keep trying to learn and reach out and also holding true the importance and value of relationships. We're going through a situation in one of my businesses right now with a few of my coworkers, my teammates. They're just really struggling, and one of them's really triggered. And it's so interesting to watch these adults regress to adolescence. But it's something I've seen a lot of, and to try to stay present and navigate through that in a really loving and connected way can be really challenging. Another thing that I want to mention, though, when it comes to leadership is Cornel West. He is a human rights activist, and I think he's a professor at Princeton right now. He's the Black guy with the big afro and the big goatee and the big gap, and he wears the suit. You see him on TV a lot. But I met him in an airport in Jacksonville, Florida, years ago, and I sat down with him and I said, what's the key to success? And he said, don't try to be successful. He said, you're already successful. He said, if you're flying and you're here in this airport right now, he said, you're already successful. Work to be great. He said, be great. He said, now that's something to strive for, to be great. And that was 25 years ago when he told me that. It's one of those things that I feel like from a leadership standpoint, I've not always been a great leader. I've failed my team many times, and I keep trying to learn. I keep trying to grow. It's funny, I was thinking about one of the first business I ever started, and I had a great team, but I was an immature leader. And sometimes it's just a matter of, we've got to go through the process to grow into our maturity and into our wisdom.
I think that's something important to remember too. Just because we're put in a leadership position, we are always growing, and that's going to change over time. Like you said, we should be becoming better leaders all the time, right? It's not, we don't usually lead the same way we do from year 1 to year 15, right? I saw that with my coaches, and I'd hear stories, and, I see people, talk about that. Coach used to do this with us, and so that's the point, is evolving and growing and learning, as well as culture. I mean, I'm thinking of that from the athletic standpoint. There's a lot of athletes, they're saying you just can't treat them the same. Even in parenting, I've heard like the things like, that used to work don't really work these days. And
right.
Some of it probably never worked in the first place. So as we finish up with the D, the dedication, the drive, you're dedicated, you are driven, right? You've done that action piece. You show up daily. What would you say that somebody could kind of focus on? You've mentioned a lot, just taking action, but is there something specific on a daily basis that you would say in that? Because I feel like the dedication piece is almost that, like, where it all comes together. It is that, it's the action piece, like you mentioned. Is there something specific that you would say that helps you or could help others, like in that kind of daily mindset? Because it's a grind sometimes.
It is a grind. And my answer to that would be to never stop learning. Learn every single day. Every day, Leah, I listen to some kind of educational video. I read some kind of educational material, some kind of inspirational material. I am a consummate learner. And the reason, and sometimes it's not even, I was sitting with a friend, I picked up a friend once to go to dinner, And when he got in the car, I was listening to an audio program, and he said, and he listened to it for a few minutes as I was trying to turn it off. And he said, that seems kind of basic for you. And I was like, exactly. I have to keep repeating the same stuff. The more I will learn the most basic level of stuff, the more it just conditions me and strengthens me. So I would say, just keep learning. And if you want to start a business, or if you want to, my mom and I were talking about this the other day. The first book that I remember reading that turned me on to reading was a book called Out of Control by Thomas Hollywood Henderson, who was a linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys in the 1970s. I found that book in Mountain View, Oklahoma, in our little podunk grocery store on this little book rack. It was a paperback book. It had something to do with football. I happened to have $5 and I bought it, and that book changed my life. It turned me on not only to the focus on higher performance, but it turned me on to reading. After that, I read other football books. That was all that was important to me, was football. But it was that book, Out of Control, that opened me up to reading, and it completely changed my life. I told my mom, I'm going to reach out to Thomas Hollywood Henderson one of these days. But if you want to start a business, learn. Gary Vee says, go and do 40 hours of YouTube, 40 hours of Google. It's all there. It's right here on your phone. And the more you'll start pouring into yourself, the more your anxiety and your fear drops. So the more you learn, and the more you know, and the more you grow, the less your fear is. And that's because you are expanding the presence of love in your being. You're expanding the love in your energy and in your vibration by sowing into yourself. And the more you sow love into yourself, the dimmer fear gets. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to, we're a place where we're just all love, and we're just vibrating love, and let love guide you. Don't let fear hold you back, because that's all fear is going to do. It's going to hold you back. Let love guide you, and have courage, and just keep pushing forward.
Yes, let love guide you. That is so great. And like you said, I think the more that you do read, I think sometimes you realize, wow, okay, they might have shared something I didn't know, but in other ways they're just like me. Or, okay, I have these strengths. And it does so much. It really does widen and expand your understanding, your knowledge, your wisdom. That is just such great advice. So I just want to thank you so much, Bryan, for coming on and just sharing your wisdom. I think this is something that people need to hear, because again, you started out, you were adopted. There was, stuff that happened in your family that you were able to turn for good. You were able to turn and utilize in such a positive way. You've now impacted so many children and families around this country, and continuing to with, all your books. How many books do you have, really quick? 13 books. Even that, you're just a best-selling author. So you've done so many different things, but I feel like for every one of us, it's just, we're never too young. We're never too old to be making a difference. We just have to take action, like you said, and not allow fear to hold us back. So thank you so much again for coming on.
Leah, before we go, I just want to say, I am so grateful for you. You are such an amazing light. And if anyone has an opportunity to hear you speak in person, or bring you into their organization to speak, it is a life-changing, uplifting, inspirational experience. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank you for exposing the world through the Gold Standard podcast to all these preeminent athletes and this mindset. My mom and I were listening to your first episode the other day with Jenny Finch. We were driving through the desert, and I just said to my mom, I said, this is so awesome. I said, for a young athlete to have an opportunity to hear from the premier athletes in our society about mindset and about goals. I mean, oh my gosh, you just fired me up so much. And so I want to give you your flowers and thank you. And I'm just so honored to be a part of your life and the things that you do.
Well, thank you. And we know that this is just the beginning for Major Media League, for the Gold Standard podcast and everything. So again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tell your friends, share it, rate it, review it, and make sure to tell people to subscribe so more people can hear just other people, just like Bryan Post that we've had on today, and all the others. So thanks again.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with a friend. You can post on social media and tag @Leah20USA or use #Gold Standard Podcast. Make sure you also subscribe so you get notified each week as a new episode releases. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We appreciate your reviews as they help encourage